welcome to Real Pod.
Thank you.
AKA this little corner of my apartment.
I love it. I love it so much.
Thank you for squeezing in here.
Of course. It's so good for everyone listening. It's so cute and it smells so good. And it's like the coziest little studio I've been in.
I'm so glad to hear that. And you're the first one to embrace the blanket.
Oh, I love a blanket. Because I have to sit like cross-legged and sometimes I'm just like, no one needs to.
That makes me very happy that you're embracing all the senses of the studio. You are so cool. I've been like, not only have I been following you, but now that I've been like researching and getting ready for this, you're so vulnerable. You're so open about your mental health. I feel like there's so much more that meets the eye than like a 10-second TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
And do you feel like everyone knows that about you, or do you sometimes get that reaction?
I think it depends. It depends on how well someone knows me or how much they've watched my content. But there's a lot of people that I feel like know that side of me for sure. I've never talked about it online, but I love it because it makes me feel like, talking about it is the right thing to do.
It's sweet because they're trying to relate. Like, oh, you went through this and I did too, so we're the same.
Yeah.
But you're like, I'm shoveling pasta in my mouth and this is not the time.
And I'm just so bad at talking to people in general when I'm not ready for it. And so there's been times where I like don't really know what to say because it's one thing talking to a camera, it's another thing talking to someone in person, and that could be like really intimidating, but I do love it because it is encouraging in a way, and it makes me feel like I'm not just talking to a wall. But yeah, sometimes I've been like eating and it's like I start having these like deep conversations at Texas Roadhouse and it's like, but I love it. I live for it.
Isn't it weird how when you're posting at home, it feels so like, I'm just like putting up a little post, and then you see the views or the numbers and you're like, wait, I kind of just put this out there to the world, and it's literally how I act when I'm comfortable and alone. I sometimes have that, but then when I start to overthink it, I start to get afraid and like not post, and so I have to like get out of the mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. I have phases with that where some days I'm like, I want to post everything and talk about everything, and some days I'm just like, I kind of cringe at myself sometimes. Also, I cannot watch a lot of my own videos, but yeah, seeing like a number, it's hard to sort of put into context until you see people in person or people come up in person. And then it's like, oh, this is someone who actually watched that. Like, this is one of the people that, I don't know. It's very cool.
Right. And have you always been vulnerable, or has that something that's happened as your platform has continued to grow?
I'm actually more vulnerable with the internet and with my audience than I am in my own life. Like, if you ask the people closest to me, I don't know how to communicate very well. I'm very much an internalizer, but when it comes to sharing things with my audience, because I feel like it can be helpful, that's become a no-brainer. In the beginning it wasn't. In the beginning it was very scary, but that's sort of become very easy. But in my personal life, I'm not that person.
I feel like that kind of makes sense because you started building your platform at such a young age. Was it 6th grade?
Yeah, I was 13, so I think it was maybe the end of 7th grade.
Yeah, but so at that age, it's like you are getting used to, okay, when I have a feeling or a thought or a mood or a song I like, I post it and I share it with these people. And I feel like that's just kind of a part of our generation, like just sharing everything that we do. Yeah. So how do you think that getting such a large platform, which just for context, everyone listening, I mean, you started on Musical.ly, then that switched over to TikTok. At one point, most followed person on the app, still like at a high school age. And this is like tens of millions of people. So when you look back at that, how do you think it affected positively or negatively, like you as you grew up?
Oh my goodness. I think there was positives and negatives on both sides. I mean, for one, I was very lonely. I was homeschooled a few times, and then when I started social media, I was homeschooled again, but I bounced back and forth between public school and being homeschooled. And I would finish my schoolwork so quickly, and then I had nothing to do all day, and I had no friends. All my friends were, the 2 friends that I had were in school, so I was like pretty out of the loop. So it was nice. I started posting, and then people started caring. I'm summarizing to the utmost.
I know, right? Like you're doing, here's my life in a nutshell.
Yeah. But there was a lot going on at that time, and just to sort of be able to detach from my life and everything that was happening in it, and put that into a different outlet and people were listening was a positive. But of course, like, there's the very normal negatives that come with social media and growing up online and sort of having, and then, you know, becoming a part of like LA culture and how that affected the way that I saw myself. So, you know, but there was also the audience was like the best part of it, because that's what sort of helped me out of this slump and then has kept me out of it for, I don't even know how long I've been doing social media now. Like, I'm 22, so 9 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to hear you say that you only had a couple of friends in high school, because you're obviously so sociable, you're so sweet, you're so talkative. Do you think that, like, it was you weren't feeling super understood by the people in your class? Do you think your confidence has come with time? I think it's just an important thing to talk about. Not everyone had the ideal high school experience.
Yeah, I never even got to go to physical high school. So by the time I was high school age, I was living in LA. So when I was in middle school, I left in 5th grade, and I was homeschooled in 5th grade because I was bullied. I was not the most gorgeous child.
Which is like shocking to
Yeah.
hear or believe currently.
Thank you. Yeah, I was super blonde, and people were afraid of me because they thought I was albino, which is like such a like dumb middle school kid way of thinking. But that really got to me. And then my mom was like, you don't have to be here. So my mom pulled me out and homeschooled me. And then I started learning how to do eye makeup, and I learned how to do my eyebrows and my eyelashes. And I was so bored at homeschool that I was like, you know what? I think I feel like confident enough to go back to school. And then when I went back to school, the whole social media thing happened, and I wasn't cool anymore again, but for a different reason. So it was a lot of, I was just very confused, and it wasn't cool to be friends with me. And I had like 3 friends that put up with a lot from people at school just for being friends with me. And I'm still friends with all 3 of them. But yeah, that's just the tip of the iceberg. That was just like school. And then of course you deal with it online, and it just it's a constant thing, but I've never let that really get in my way.
What a contrast to the character you play in Incoming, because you are like the it girl. And
yeah, I was living my fantasy.
No, I mean, it was so cool. I mean, so was that, like, first of all, I loved the movie.
Thank
It's
you.
so fun. It reminds me of like a Superbad-esque, but like modern day. Like, I was laughing out loud, you know? So how was it for you to play the part of someone in high school that it felt so different from what you actually lived?
I mean, it was kind of easy because it feels like that's what people expect me to be.
Okay.
So, and that's always been the stereotype that I've been placed in. So I've been living that role for a long time, but it was fun because I never went to high school. I graduated from homeschooling. So it was cool to like go to a high school and see what that was like, and to be the cool girl. Not for long. There was like a couple days where I got to be a cool girl, and then the rest was just not that.
I was a really like I don't want to give too many spoilers. I know it's out, but I want everyone to go watch it. But you really, like, your character and like the car scene and like the drunken mess, like I was like, oh my god, like, respect. She's really leaning into comedy.
Yeah, I loved the script because it was so outlandish. And I've never acted in anything before, but I laughed when I was reading that script, and I was like, this would be so fun as like my first acting experience, and I wanted it to be something that people wouldn't necessarily expect from me. So I locked in during those auditions, and I did so many auditions, but I wanted it really, really bad, and I'm glad that I got to do it.
Me too. And you had something so cool, which was the like stereotypical dream scene, like I think we all fantasize about, which is like a slow-mo moment. Like when that happened, I was like, no, this is everyone's bucket list. It's like, I need to hear about that, and then I have some thoughts. But so, did you know that they were going to do that? Or like when you watch the final edit, did the script say like slow-mo, Lauren like blowing her hair, taking a selfie?
Yeah, the script was originally something slightly different. And I was like, well, I think it'd be cuter if I was like taking pictures of my friends or whatever. Because she's a girl's girl. Katrina's a girl's girl. So we changed that a little bit. But yeah, it was like the intro. And I mean, yeah, what a dream. Like everybody wants that. And they put me in a really cute dress, which I was so thankful for because I was like, oh, I needed to look so cute. But yeah, that part I love every time.
So you have been open about like struggling with body image and the intense beauty standards. So something that I do think I've always thought is like those scenes are iconic, and if I could do one, I would do it yesterday. And I do think seeing those in the movies makes, I think, girls also think like there is a type of beautiful that time stops, you have no flaws, and like that has to be like where you need to get. And if you're not like walking into a bar and everyone's like looking at you, like, are we pretty enough? Mm-hmm. Have you ever felt like that pressure? Because I feel like reading Rosalie in the Twilight series. Did you read Twilight?
Yes, of course.
I mean, like the scenes about her in the cafeteria. I used to fantasize about like, okay, what can I do? Like, can I get skinny? Can I do this to my face? Especially when I was younger, to be like that type of pretty.
Yeah, I mean, I've always struggled with self-image, and especially starting on social media so young, and even before that being in school. And I was never a fan of guys. Like, I never had like an artist that I had a crush on or an actor that I had a crush on. It was always like, oh, I want to be her. Like, I want to be Rachel McAdams.
And Megan Fox for me.
Yes. Like, I always had those people that I was like, ugh, if only. But I didn't think that would ever be me. And now that I have a moment like that, I'm still like, not my best. Like, and it sucks because you're always going to have such high standards for yourself because you know yourself the best. But that's what I loved about this role, was that I didn't live in that world. It was like a very short moment where it's like, oh, wow, slow motion hair flip. And then everything goes to shit, like literally.
Right.
So that I really, really loved because it was a very humanizing role. And that was something that I was looking for, because there's a million roles where I can be like exactly what people expect.
Right.
And I wanted it to be I was excited that it was a little different than that, and I wanted something like that.
I think it's so important that you share that because, and I know you've been open about struggling with your own insecurities, and honestly, like, who hasn't? Like, right, that's part of being human. Because I think young girls, like, we always think there's a certain type of body or a certain type of look that once we achieve, we will never look in the mirror and like not be happy. And, I think there's people especially who probably look at you or they look at anyone online and think, oh, if I could be her, I'd have no problems. But then you're saying like, hey, I'm that girl sitting here and like I have a very real life and insecurities like everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, there's a lot of things that I don't like about myself. And I've always had issues with like body image and not feeling like I'm skinny enough or pretty enough or meeting everyone's expectations of like who I should be, and comparing myself to girls on TikTok and looking at Instagram and being like, but that's not real life.
Yeah.
And no matter how authentic someone seems, it's just not real life. Someone can be beautiful, but that doesn't take away from you. And I feel like that's what I learned living in LA, was like, I started to love the things about me that made me different, because I realized that you can fall very easily into this trap anywhere that you are, but especially here. You can fall into this trap of wanting to look like everyone else and becoming like everyone else, and then you lose every sense of yourself. Mm-hmm. And I started to do that, and I mean,
in what ways? Can you give an example?
Yeah, I mean, I was putting my body through hell when I first moved here, because I felt like I was trying to keep up with what everyone else looked like. Mm. And I was 17 and I was the skinniest I'd ever been in my life. I mean, like, I was skinnier at 17 than I was when I was like 11. Yeah. And that looked fine, I guess, in pictures to other people. But to me, my hair was falling out. And like I was putting tons and tons of extensions in my hair to fill out my hair. And there was so many things that were unhealthy. My body was falling apart. And that should not be the standard of beauty.
We shouldn't have to put ourselves through something like that to achieve like success.
Right, exactly. And it's not about the way that I looked, because everyone comes in different body sizes and different shapes, and you can be really skinny and really healthy. But if you're sacrificing your health or your well-being or even just your mental health to look a certain way or look how you think you should look comparatively to other people, then it's never ever worth it, ever. And I've learned that the hard way, for sure. Yeah.
And it's hard, like, being online every day or being in cameras. I mean, I sometimes will watch back a Real Pod episode and be like, you know, have thoughts of like, oh, how am I sitting? Or how's my arm? And then I'm like, Victoria, you're interviewing someone and trying to have like a deep convo to help another person. Like, it is so not about your body.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to always think like we can lose weight, especially now with like, I think the swing back of like heroin chic and all that. And Loren, I hope you don't think this is weird, but like we kind of have a trauma bond as I was listening to some of your stuff. I also had an eating disorder. Fun. But we both had a like belief. Don't tell me if I'm wrong, but I heard you say this on another podcast. A attempted like bulimia-esque moment where then we were like out of body, like throwing up is not for me.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm doing this. Like I had a one-time thing.
Oh, really?
Yes. And
that's crazy.
I've never come across someone who's the same. Like, but I guess I got to this low place where I was like, okay, like this is what I have to do now. And then right after that moment, I was like, what the, like, this is not me. I hate this. I'm like terrified of throwing up as well.
Me too.
If I have the flu, I like start to get a panic that I'm going to maybe vomit.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I feel like I don't like it. So when I heard you say that, I was like, oh my God, I had the same experience.
That's wild. I'm glad to hear. I mean, I'm not glad to hear, but
Right.
It's nice to hear someone like relate, because I feel like so many times, especially with the internet, I've been exposed to so many people where I'm like, there's no way that someone else feels that way, because there's a lot of dark thoughts up in here that you don't talk about with people like a day-to-day, you know, in passing. So I think that's the beautiful part about the internet, is you get to meet people with shared experiences. And one of the good things that I feel like has come out of me being vulnerable on the internet and me sharing my experiences is I get to have moments like this with people where it's like I feel less crazy, they feel less crazy, and it's like, okay, I'm not alone in this. And that's a really powerful thing, because when right before I started social media and I was going through everything I was going through in school, I thought I was the only person in the world with these experiences, and I wanted to just like push it as far away as I could. And then the older I got, the more exposed I was to people who had similar experiences to me. So it is a really beautiful thing.
Yeah. And you seem like really well spoken about what you've been through and have a really good sense of self, which I love and think is the most important. Like, if I'm not constantly assessing my own life and trying to like get better, figure out why I was the way I was. I actually saw this TikTok that said, my best friend and I no longer gossip and judge people. We instead sit there and try to understand why they are the way they are.
And that's valid. Like, I spend so much time on a daily basis psychoanalyzing myself, and I feel like I'm always finding out new things about myself. And that's the thing, is everyone has that like constant inner dialogue, and a lot of it is very self-centered, right?
Right.
When you're thinking about yourself all day long, and then for me, like my job is also thinking about and looking at myself all day long.
Yeah.
It can be very easy to sort of like only look inward and forget that like you're not the only person in the world, and there's, you know, other people that are experiencing the same thing.
How did you get on the journey of like better understanding yourself? Was it a book? Was it a podcast? Was it like hitting rock bottom, therapy?
My dad has really, really severe OCD, and that's something I grew up with. It was like sometimes a challenge as a, a kid growing up, is like we would sort of work around his OCD. And I think the older that I've gotten, the more like similarities I start to feel in that department.
Okay.
I don't want to like diagnose myself, but I do,
I do
you're
all the
raised
time.
you're raised around someone who's very much that
Yeah.
way. You're bound to pick up or inherit some traits like that. So I feel like the older I've gotten, I just want to know everything. If I have a question, I look it up. And the one thing that I can't look up and that I really don't understand is myself, and that drives me crazy every day. And I do a lot of things in my life and with relationships and with people, and I'm like, why am I doing these things?
Yeah.
Whether that be negative or positive. Like, for example, like if someone, this is a stupid example, but if someone asks me what's wrong, why do I say I'm okay 30 times before telling them? Like, why is that? And so I think about myself a lot, because that's the one thing that I really, really don't understand. But I think I've gotten a better understanding. But I think it's just that, like, needing to know, because my dad's one of those people that just needs to know and needs to be in control of everything. And that's how I've slowly become, is I just need to be in control, especially when it comes to myself.
I noticed your likes are off on Instagram. Is
Yeah.
that a mental health protection?
Yeah, they've been off for like years. The second that feature came out, I was like, I'm never looking at this ever again. So yeah, and I just don't, there's so many numbers all the time. I don't need to see it all the time. It's not helpful.
Yeah, I respect that. I think it's so important for us to know, like you said, I'm assessing what's making me unhappy. What am I looking for validation? What's triggering me to start spiraling or be negative? And is this something I can change or like remove from my life in a certain way?
Yeah, and I feel like I used to, because I've been doing social media for so long that, you pick up on patterns of what people want to see and what gets the most likes. And a lot of times what gets the most likes are not the things that I'm most proud of, not the things that I'm like, I want to talk about this. I just feel like I have more that I want to share. And sometimes my body constantly being talked about is not good for me,
You've talked about being a sex symbol and having that be part of your image, and especially like what you've seen other people in the industry even want you to push and have at the forefront of what you do. And I think that it's so interesting, right? Because like I think women, like, it's nice to feel sexy and it's nice to feel like good about yourself, whatever that means for you. But then there is like another overlap of when other people are sexualizing or when other people are looking at it. And I'm like, but it's not for you.
Yeah. And I also think for me, and in my experience, there have been moments where I feel cute and I feel hot and I want to post it for me. And then sometimes that turns into, I feel like I need to now keep this up for other people. And that's, if you're doing it for yourself or you're doing it because that's what you want to do, I mean, guilty as charged.
Yeah.
I mean, I love posting a cute little, sexy little picture, but I feel like I also got caught up in this cycle where I was like, okay, I need to like one up myself this time. I need to look better than I did yesterday, and I'm like proving myself to people.
Yeah.
And that's not what I set out to do.
I love that. Something that I think is so interesting that is important for people to hear is, on paper, you might have the platform and the follower count that someone thinks, like they really think, and I've been guilty of this. I think at the start of my career, if I can hit this number, I'll be happy. Or if I can hit this number, I can make this much, or this number, and then my problems will go away. I feel like I'm at the first place in my life where I really don't want to grow. And on the one hand, that feels freeing. On the other hand, it feels like scary, because then I'm like, oh, okay, like what am I going to do? And if I don't keep growing, what does that mean? But as someone who turns their likes off when the range of it is probably like, I don't know, whether it's 50,000, 100,000, 300,000, there might be someone who's thinking, oh, but even the lower spectrum, whatever that is insane. But then you're here like, hey, as a human, you will, as you level up, you will still bring with you the same thought process
It
and
never
like
goes away.
baggage. So can you like talk more about that so that hopefully the parts of myself and people listening can be like, we don't need external validation.
Yes, that feeling never ever goes away. You can have all of the followers, all of the money, all of the things. And I was accomplishing so much, and didn't look back once to be like, wow, that's really cool and really impressive, and like, who would have thought? I was just like, keep going.
Right.
Not enough. And while that feeling it will keep you motivated, it's also really, really bad for your self-esteem. And there has to be a balance of, okay, I'm working forward and I'm moving forward, and there's more that I want to accomplish, but I'm also really, really proud of myself as I am now, as I've done it. I mean, until this year, I didn't stop to think at all, like, that I built a career for myself and was able to sustain that from, like, being 13 in my room to now, like, evolving into what it is now.
Yeah.
And that's something that I never really gave myself credit for. And, you know, it's hard when you're like, well, numbers are down this week, or numbers are down this month, or numbers are down this year. In the grand scheme of things, next year can be a better year. Or, you know, things ebb and flow, things go up and down. And that's the way that any career is, really, or anything in life. There's highs and there's lows. My dad told me, he was like, people who say that they're happy all the time are liars. He was like, you get little moments, you get moments of happiness, and the rest of it you're just like like kind of try to keep up with yourself. And it's important to really, really, like, sit in those moments of happiness and try to find those moments of happiness, because it can be really, really hard when you're exposed constantly to everyone else who you feel like is doing better than you. But you have to be able to look back and be like, I got from A to B, from B to C, and C to D, and that's really impressive and cool, and I'm proud of myself.
Dad seems like a realist.
He really is. He is the realest dude. And my mom too. Like, my mom is sick. Both my parents are awesome.
That's so great.
And I say it every time I do anything, because I have to. They're wonderful. But yeah. And that stuck with me, because I was like, that's so true.
It is. I mean, to literally know what happiness feels like, you have to have the sad. It's like the spectrum, the yin and the yang. To really feel grateful for a moment, you have to know what it would be like to not have that moment.
Yeah.
So even when I'm in my sad funks, or I'm depressed, or I'm down, I'm like, this is all a part of then, like, the ability to experience the joy and the happy. Thank you for that. I just think that is so important, since you have realized, and you're helping people realize, that fulfillment won't really come from the numbers and the material things. What are the things now that you look for fulfillment and turn to for that joy?
Oh my gosh. So something I've been trying to get better at that is fulfilling for me is, I found myself neglecting a lot of relationships in my life because I was too busy. Too busy to answer, too busy to call, too busy to do things, or too busy to get back to you, too busy to hang out with you, because my priority has always been work. And because I really don't know what I am without this. It's my whole life. It's been my whole life that I can remember. So I've been trying to figure out who I am outside of who I am as you know, a person in the entertainment industry, as a person who's working. Like, who is Loren when she's hanging out with her friends? And a lot of things have been put into perspective, especially this year. It's just been absolute chaos. But my grandma got diagnosed with cancer this year, and she had a stroke, and that was really scary for our family. And I was like, I didn't call her hardly ever. When I was little, I used to talk to her every single day. And I barely talked to her. I would talk to her and be like, hey, I'm working, you know? And it sucks that it takes, like, something like that happening for it to be like, oh my God, I was barely speaking with you. And you're one of the most important people in my life. So that puts things into perspective. And then
how's she doing?
She's doing better. She's doing a lot of chemo, which is tough, but the stroke symptoms have like subsided a little bit. Thank you for asking.
Good.
But I've been going back to Pennsylvania more often, and that's another thing. I barely went home between the time I was like 17 or 16 to like 20. I was barely home. I was just out in LA dating random dudes and moving them into my house and working. And that was kind of it. So I was like, there are other people that love you outside of this. Like, my parents love me and I love hanging out with them. My friends back home love me. My friends here love me. And I just like was not making time for the people that make me happy.
Yeah.
Without the pressure of being like, oh my God, I'm not posting right now. Oh my God, I haven't posted in 2 days. Like, that's so, in the grand scheme of things, so unnecessary. And the world doesn't need to know what you're doing all the time. And you also should make time for the people that make you happy.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing all that. It's such an important reminder. I had a time recently where I forget what it was, but I have this notes page on my phone where I've been putting inspirational things. And I remember one day I just wrote down, like, in all caps, like, family is everything. There's nothing more important than the relationships with the people you love. Mm-hmm. And we can be pulled from that. I think about it even just with like my husband, Max. I'm like, wait, so we married each other because we want to be with each other all the time. But then we actually spend the majority of our hours each week like working and not being together. Mm-hmm. It almost feels like so backwards at times. Right. And I do think we're all constantly trying to find that perfect balance of like, how do I show up enough for the people I love and like make sure that they feel that and I feel that. So I think that's just a real thing that a lot of us feel all the time.
Yeah, and it's a lot of pressure also. Like, it's a lot of pressure to be everywhere all at once, especially when you have a lot of love in your heart and you love a lot of people, because I don't have a lot of people in my life, but the people that I do have, I care about deeply. I would do anything for them. So it can be a lot of pressure, but you know, you only get one chance at, you know, spending time with the people that you love and doing what you can. And, you know, there's a balance, but work cannot be everything.
Yeah.
There is more to life and there is more to see. And that's just what that's what I've been feeling recently. 'Cause I mean, I didn't see my dad when I was out here in LA for like, I would see him a couple times a year for like 3 years. And each time he would come, I'm like, I was 16 and then I'm 18 and I'm growing out of nowhere. And he didn't get to experience any of that. So there was a lot of time lost there and a lot of sacrifices that were made by my family. But, you know, I'm grateful because I, you know, have done a lot with it. And now I have the ability to go back to Pennsylvania and go back and forth and I have more flexibility. But yeah, I think finding that balance between like what's fulfilling to me and what's fulfilling to me in my career and making sure if you have a bunch of little cups and they're all your different facets of your life, you know, your work and your friends and your family and your pets and your all the things, you have to pour a little bit of water into each one. You can't just pour all your water into one glass.
Definitely. This is all making me think of The Best Day by Taylor Swift.
Oh my gosh,
and you said Pennsylvania. Yes. And I could not let you leave here if we didn't have a quick Swiftie geek out moment.
Yes, please.
I mean, you literally were in the Man music video.
Yes.
I mean, you could have retired right there. You literally could have been done.
I peaked, yeah.
I mean, like, who, what, when, where, how? Did you know you were going to be in her music video? You had such an iconic cameo.
Thank you. No, not fully. I had suspicions, and then on the day, you figure it out. But coolest person I've ever met. I love her so much. I was already such a fan, and then after meeting her, I became the biggest fan because it's really cool to meet someone that influential and that successful and that talented, and just be like, oh, you know where I'm from and you cared enough to like talk to me and give advice and like hang out, and that she didn't have to do any of that, and I still would have been like gone home and been like, that was the best day ever.
Yeah.
But
just to be in the presence.
Literally.
I got to meet her in the rep room after the Reputation tour.
Oh my gosh, how was that?
Oh my God, it was so insane. I like literally wish I remembered it more. All I remember is that my butt cheeks were like shaking. Like I've never actually had both my legs like be shaking. Like I could feel it. I was like, oh, is this what it like? Is this what it's like to twerk? But she was so nice. And the only thing I remember is that I said something about like how much she's impacted my life. And then she said something, I forget how it got here, but she was like, yeah, I turned my likes and comments off on Instagram to like protect my mental health. Obviously during the rep era, like she had to do a lot of that.
Yeah.
But she still has it that way. And it just reminds me of a little bit about what we talked about today.
Yeah.
Like even Taylor Swift is like doing what she needs to do to protect her mentals. But oh my God, would like die to meet her again.
I like deeply regret not being like, by the way, you like changed my life, which I did. I tweeted her after and she saw it and she responded, but like that's not the same. Like I could have said more. I wish I had like wrote it out. I had a script ready. But I'm really, really happy and grateful for that interaction because it gave me hope that there are people that can be successful and can be incredible and also humble.
Just like you.
Oh, thank you.
I will literally forever, I've never had to defend you. I've never heard anything bad about you, but I'm just saying like, I'm forever a fan. Like you're just
thanks.
the way you feel about her. I'm sure your fans feel about you when they meet you. And it has just been such a joy to talk to you.
Thank you.
Congrats on Incoming. I hope everyone watches it. Predicting that as you hear this, it's definitely, if not number 1 on Netflix, top 5. I feel like it's going to blow up.
Thank you.
So thanks. It was so great to chat with you. And I'm excited to keep watching what you do. And I'm manifesting another Taylor work situation.
I need it. I'm like having withdrawals. I've been like,
I know.
yeah.
Well, thanks, Loren.
Thank you.
Yay.